Hello everyone! You are watching my attempt to convince you to listen to music of James Ferraro, known by many names and surrounded in lots of mystery. But you might want to stay because his music is unlike anything else you have heard. And so the rabbit hole of his discography begins. Over 100 albums, most not even credited to his name, and invented over 3 actual genres of music. Upon deeper listening, I realized his tendency to change mood, personality, image, and even era of his music seamlessly. Sounding like they were made by completely different people, much of his albums have a rural, local essence, just like his first album, Cruising the Night Biker Strip 1977. It's some sort of a improvised vintage cassette tape. Let me start by saying that his albums are very low quality, but that does not make them hard to listen to. Instead, it gives them a necessary and atmospheric lo-fi punch. I consider it delightfully equalized and a pleasure to the ears. I'm guessing it was recorded by placing a speaker in a big room, giving it a ghastly sound, and the artwork is somehow even campier than the music, being just a dirty piece of paper with scribbles on it. The first song, Night Biker, is the most neutrally calming ambient loop I have heard in a good while. Incomprehensible on first listen drum beat, which I can describe as my brain's attempt to make out rhythms out of faint machine sounds in the other room while trying to fall asleep. It genuinely sounds as if ghosts find out what music is and try to record it, so this is their first attempt. Warped synths beyond any recognition, playing add to the harmony, making this fitting for the introduction to his discography. And no, this album is not actually from 1977, he started in 2004. Dedicated Music for the Methods Inside the Center of Heaven is the next song title, and you might already start to notice a pattern of how poetic his song titles are, and what kind of imagery they generate upon reading them. Every instrument is faint. This album will not be as good if it weren't for the singing, masked by lo-fi murkiness. The sound is over 20 minutes long. I'll talk about the role of length here later. The first melody is accompanied by mechanical, working in a loop kind of drum. It's like I'm in a countryside. Horse galloping with American shaman friends, and then transitions with a flanger, hypnotizing ambience, and turns into a very friendly and chill, highly reverbed rock band melody similar to music of dirty beaches. It sounds like a recording of a 70s cafe nightclub, which is to say the sound is detailed and atmospheric. And our next tape has almost truly improvised and random shamanic drums, accompanied with a hopeful road melody that clearly repeats the same motifs, but I find it hard to pinpoint when exactly the next note will play. It tries to break through a soul's cry. It's exciting, and the music keeps growing with other progressive electronic synths on top of which is my favorite kind of synth. Heaven's Burst Creations Horizon sounds like an unusual hotline company. The cover looks as if it was made from bronze and gold, even though it's just a paper craft. I already got into the pace of reviewing his tips, but I feel now is a good time to explain Hypnagogic Pop. Hypnagogic Pop is an unrecognized 2010 genre that's really cool. It imitates old school music from older decades and generations to a lo-fi sound and production that most contemporary musicians don't use anymore. They use obscure synthesizers or record their own sounds through synthesizers like Casio SK1.
I can record a sample of him whenever he's in the mood. Come on, Rube. Got it. Now whenever I want Rufus to hit it, I just hit this button.
This scene is like trying to remember music from a dream. It's hard to explain it, so here's a demo of how it sounds. Some of it is close to pop or surf rock. It's music that sounds like it uses samples even if it does not. It's music that sounds like it is a soundtrack from a non-existent rock band from a film. Intentionally warped in creative methods with static and bad tape sound quality being part of the music. And some is more stylistically thrilling and cryptic, like a haunted house. James, on the other hand, explored the whole spectrum of the sound to its fullest potential and beyond. What I mean by this is every album, a different world, with every sound carefully placed to make sense in the album's universe. Everyone hears something different, but the associations you hear when listening to his music are usually pretty similar. Albums being in a different world and timeline is what I personally got out of listening to them. Very few of his albums were released under his real name, the rest are almost entirely throwaway aliases, such as Composition of Sensibilities of Melted Knowledge, Sky and Mirror Ballroom in Preparation for Deja Vu, Teotihuacan, and of course... None of these are randomly generated, this is pure human creativity.
Look at the record label they are signed to, with the hilariously generic name New Age Tapes, and find out that every artist and record on that label is actually just James. That, along with most of them being black and white, looking like something unintentionally cheap, made with a desire to save costs, creates a mind-blowing aesthetic that embraces kitsch. Kitsch means art that people find to be low quality yet sentimental. It parodies a certain unspoken culture and mindset of a time frame the album tries to sound like, with an esoteric feeling that is beyond describing, which is why every review of this kind of music just describes associations. Let's get back with
his earliest and most successful work was with Spencer Clark, who is still making hypnagogic pop in the same style. They were friends who made music together. The Skaters, such is the name that many noise albums came out under. The Skaters are a very challenging work to listen to. Most of it consists of guitar feedback, drone, tribal drums. It's probably intentionally deceptional because the Skaters, from the name alone, is a generic skate punk band. But instead you get psychicalities of the sensibilities of ingrediental stairways. You would expect such music from people who never use the internet. But if you are in the mood for this kind of music, you can meditate and transport to another dimension just by listening. It is not complex, but it nails the atmosphere of doing a ritual and singing worship songs with long stretch out notes and with drone guitar. Something about two guys coming together to make noise music without concepts, out of pure passion and releasing subconscious stuff beyond any descriptions into musical form that fascinates me. On Wind Drapening Incense, there is a gorgeous Chinese theater part that comes out of nowhere and is foretelling of James' future work. So let's review Psychicalities of the Sensibilities of Ingrediental Stairways. This album is their best output. It's hard to tell what these sounds are, as they don't sound like any conventional instruments, except the progressive electronic synths reminiscent of early 106 Point Never. The artwork fits perfectly, it's bright and tense, while being black and white. The reverb of the sound, and I don't mean the virtual reverb effect and audacity, I mean real cold reverberation recorded in a big empty room, helps the music sound naturally cold. And like any other Ferraro album, it creates a false sense of obscurity by collaging a Bhutanese shadow market slaughterhouse with what looks to be an Eastern church. Which is why I categorize this music as surreal. Nobody on planet Earth would think to build a church inside a slaughterhouse, and the kind of people that would are the kind of people that will listen to albums like this daily. It's surreal in the same way as Jodorowsky movies are. It is hard to tell what the noise part consists of. What I hear is chanting recorded from an overdriven speaker and the harmony both playing at the same time, so the music benefits from being blurry, grainy like sandpaper, and the more clear part playing consists of repeating melodies, bird chirps, or string elements. If you ever wanted to be bored into an altar doing magic and rituals from Yajurveda every day and banging on buckets and spurs, it's the same experience but in 30 minutes. It's more energetic despite looking scary, very pleasant to explore the esoteric world. I also really enjoyed Dispersed Royalty Ornaments because it has less evil energy and more animal sounds than the previous one. The cover reminds me of Japanese horror games like Kanoguchi. Wooden Cupboard albums are the shortest and last about 24 minutes each. It's a delightful warm civilization similar to humanity. I'm pretty sure these are stock photos of woman or iCarly and Sam cut out from magazines put on top of a very strange city photo. What cheers me up the most is how these smiling women are edited to have outlandish face paint with third eye and everything. But the facial expression signifies to me that they are going to college or something very casual, which creates a yin on how they act and yang on how they look, specifically because the girls do not display a transgressive emotion. The best part is, of course, how it starts, a promising beginning with the sincerely some of the most beautiful whistle melodies I have heard, accompanied with a single continuous note. Boiling the animal in the sky. This one starts more ordinary with a steady marching drum beat and the most wonderful singing yet. It's impossible for me to describe it and do it justice because every time I listen to it I get lost in the rainforest of sounds and get lost in underground temples and find an Easter egg in real life. But I can tell a lot of effort went into crafting these nature-themed soundscapes and making something coherent out of them, which is important. But my brain really cannot find the pattern with any of these instruments except the harmony and loops. None of this is off-putting, it's quite friendly and slow, there is no rush inside these albums, which is why I guess they end so abruptly. And that's just great. Notice how the color is in color. It gives it specific nature forest vibe. I say this because next albums will be in black and white. Menstrual Chinese Dream is one of my first Ferraro albums, so you can imagine how surprised I was to hear it. The song title 1986-1987, it actually came out in 2005, already makes me think a lot. It certainly attempts to invoke a certain time frame when such sound quality was, let's say, more acceptable to the general public and more common across certain communities than it is today, in the same way no one complained about 360p videos of early YouTube. Most underrated part of the song is the owl-like vocal that randomly comes and mutes the rest of the music with its bass. And female monologue from a drama, sort of the stuff I hear from shortwave radio while playing card games with my grandma. It sounds exactly like a slowed-down Chinese pop song. But actually it's just Ferraro making something hauntological, predating vaporwave at least a couple years back. If anything, it imitates homemade Chinese tapes that will be sold on the market, with 4 copies made and the rest given to family and acquaintances.
Spencer Clark said, when people discuss my music, sometimes they discuss like, oh, it's world building and he's creating this conceptual world. But I'm not doing that. I'm just sort of marking down what I am learning about Mother Earth, and to return the favor of life, I apply some personal twists. I believe the same applies to Ferraro's albums. You can never know who exactly he is just by listening to his music, but my review will mention a lot of world building because I cannot review them in any other way. New Age Panther mistake. So now he makes New Age exciting. A soundtrack to a B-tier puzzle game, it might have inspired artists such as Savage Young Taterbug with sentimental keyboard pads. This is to me a toy or an arcade machine for 4 friendly kids in a big house, and the hypnotizing ending might as well be a random loop from the ending of a Japanese 80s commercial. Lastly, Sunbrain Albino is the most dynamic and expensive of this era. There seems to be more noise than usual, but it's not even noticeable because of how atmospheric and enveloping these sounds are. I'm inside an aquarium and there's rocks breaking up and I'm having a blast. This is the best album for reading a book. The cold, fragile, trembling and less compressed noise merges into a variety of shimmering images of underwater meditation. So are the drums that suddenly stop but are not overly loud. I would say this album's biggest pride is its mixing. The volume of the synths, the rock static and rather lazy drums makes for a relaxing experience. It ends with a prototype of records that will come at the peak of his career. Oh, and also he released the exact same album but in extremely low quality. What a weirdo. Then there's Pandolphinic Dawn. It is a 9-minute long song which combines the best parts about everything previously mentioned into a short 9-minute package. Everybody has 9 minutes to spare, so just go and listen to it.
There were many more albums released in this era with a vast treasure of secrets left to uncover. I have noticed a thematic pattern among these albums of mythological, noisy, esoteric world building in this era, so the next band may surprise you. I present to you Lamborghini Crystal, the new hip rock band consisting of James Ferraro and his
his friend JCPV. JCPV has better hairline than any of us, which is a play on the name of the store JCPenney, I'm sure of it. This, in my opinion, is the coolest James alias. But why did I say alias if it's a band? Well, JCPV is a fictional character. If we look for Lamborghini Crystal performances online... Lamborghini Crystal? Okay, so this is James Ferraro. JCPV is just a doll. There's no way. Oh my god, it's the world famous rock star JCPV. So obviously this band that is James Ferraro with his made-up mutant friend has a clear comedic undertone. It's good friendly music that doesn't take itself too seriously, and I admire it. First album 1992 Cool Runnings, which is a reference to a 1993 Disney comedy film, is very promising. It comes to conventional rock. It might be his first album to get released on vinyl under the name Grippers and Other Monsters Live at Slimmer Beach, which is misleading because it's not actually a live album. Ferraro's key point is to use every sound to his benefit, so it benefits sounding from the way it does. You get extremely chill, looped rock choruses that are just a little lo-fi with the prominent use of amped up electric guitars and faint drums. This is exactly what Hypnagogic Pop is about. This is the first example of James seamlessly changing his style. You might remember his prehistoric temples thematic going on. Well, that's in the past cause now he's a washed up rock star in a band with an alien singing more than less normal songs with lyrics impossible to figure out due to sound quality. A dream life because hypnagogic means half awake and half asleep. Wonderful melodies returning to the elements of America's cultural past in the form of a ghost with a muffled voice. James himself in an interview described the band as delinquents and Beavis and Butthead of sorts, and I couldn't agree more. The atmosphere of jobless friends sniffing glue, playing rock and watching horror movies in their basement in the 90s, doing dumpster dives just for fun. That's the feeling I get from this music. And I love it more than most of what I see in live. After Dark Cravings is a more serious song that I can imagine easily being played live on stage. Overdue Suicidal Letter Cupid is a friendly and sentimental song. A bit sad even, but it's very enjoyable. Chillest melody and least abrasive drums and quality of the album. There is a slight phasing on the guitar, so I seriously might be remembering my past life, walking at night with a strong confidence, feeling like Arnold Schwarzenegger with a childish sincerity on a beach to Space Cake Hitchhiker. And this is authentically lo-fi. Unlike his ambient albums, it sounds closer to a busted VHS. I have not lived in the 90s, but from what I've seen, this captures the creativity of the decade perfectly. Good beginner recommended sounds. He impressively changes his voice from high to low pitch. And these are my thoughts on the project as a whole. They released many more albums. Other albums from this band that I really enjoyed are Drago Shop, Pop, Dial 747 Creepozoid, and Little Juice Scoop TV Dinners. The last album being a tad bit different and a prediction of how next Ferraro albums will sound, specifically Wild World. Cozy album cover reminiscent of a Halloween party outside the haunted mansion. He really never stops with a Cheshire smile, which makes me happy too. Clearly, he embraces the collaged worlds. There's an obvious creepiness with the lack of colors and darkening edited, but it's never ugly. I always find the cars as attractive and charming. So is the bony percussion. Just imagine for a moment actually living on this island, okay? 2007 is serious because James started releasing music under his real name. Was it particularly good that he thought it deserved his name, or did he not think much about it? Regardless, he released Clear and Discovery, 2 albums with the same cover, only one of them is black and white. Clear starts as a standard and ordinary new age ambient album, and not the kind of ambient he's done before, rather a conventional relaxation CD, similar from music of Laraji. After 8 minutes, the drums change everything completely, warp into a spa commercial. Pleasant enough, but on the second song, Clear triple drums mostly play at a fairly relaxed tempo, with faded cuts that are more like deep loud breaths. Little MIDI bass guitar composition improvises and gets more interesting over time in a jazzy structure. I read on this album that Clear is actually a reference to Scientology.
That religion which openly asks for lots of money to clear your mind of particles left by ancient alien civilizations with an e-meter, made by a science fiction author, so I imagine with this album James tried to explore the mind of how a Scientologist feels like reaching the clear state, which I approve the sociological tendencies completely. My most listened to album of his is Marble Surf. You can see and hear that in 2008 James improved a lot. The cover is almost realistically collaged, being printed on a low on ink black and white paper with scan lines helps it a lot. Garden of is an ultra strong contrast and exposure adjusted to perfection make the face and anything that is on the image almost beyond description. Such as the mysterious ring this woman is holding, with a sailboat in the background placed in magic realism paintings. The album's first half, called Memory Theater, vividly describes what is going on. So somehow James has made a realistic collage that can be mistaken for an actual photo. The paint bucket to white sky is bright and gorgeous. I sincerely believe this is closest to musical depiction of heaven. All of this is nothing more than a majestic melodic phrase that repeats itself with slight changes every once in a while. Ceremonial melody repeated over and over again, lacking any evil energy unlike any other albums I talked about before. Heavenly to the point of simplicity. Very important is the sound's texture. An overly tender and nostalgic synth, disliked by noticeable compressed blocky lo-fi reverb as a consequence of the room this was recorded in. If you ever listened to Terry Riley's A Rainbow Curtain in Air, you can expect something of a similar structure. Despite being as simple as this is, it is one of his best albums for sure, and it can make you relax. Often there are moments when the tape almost rips or skips for some reason. I see this as wabi-sabi, a Japanese aesthetic embracing imperfection and eventual fate of death of everything. Maybe embracing is not the right word, but acceptance sure is. Beauty found in broken things, and I feel the same way about sound quality of everything Ferraro makes. This piece can never be in perfect quality, but that's fine. It embraces its imperfection, embraces the afterlife. Other than the synths, another major component here is strangely phased artificial vocal. It is uncanny because it sounds realistic but is way too high pitched to be a real voice, so it comes off as synthetic. After a long time of listening, I figured out that the main synth might be a bell synth that is slowed down. That is another thing that makes it hauntological. Ferraro's music is never at the same speed as the original recording. It's probably tempered with, which gives it hauntological vibes, either pitch or speed. Second half has a different instrument playing a lead melody. The atmosphere is enhanced by extremely subtle harmonies. Surf washing on spring marble introduces arpeggios with what sounds like an actual gong or a bell, with a hit almost signifying that it's time to go soon. All of this in tasteful distortion. This is a beginner recommended Ferraro album. Now, Heaven's Gate is a spiritual successor to Marble Surf. At this point I don't even know how it does this. It's yet another passionate, heart-wrenching hour-long experience that I find no flaws with. This is beautiful and the most powerful tribute to the cult members I can imagine. It made me tear up. They deserve a piece of music of this quality made about them. These people that may be dismissed as news headlines will be forever remembered with this powerful ambient Christian music. It's also a beginner's recommended album. I read Brothers Karamazov while listening to this and it got me emotional. The Grass Magic is one of the odd and rare vinyl recordings in incredibly high quality. This is a psychedelic ritual ambient record. He got together with lots of peeps to do this jam session. Female vocals, droning harmonies, authentic ritual ambient. This is the kind of music you would listen to while powering up incense. You hear the drums clipping, it's super satisfying. Visually, it's a 70s cold record with a cardboard cover with stamped birds and a hand-drawn logo. I have seen something like this before in a dedicated website, ARG. It ends with two calming electronic chords repeating. Something like if airplane sound effects were made into a full-length song. And it looks and sounds like Nepalese movie logos. And dear viewer, there is one album that is too experimental for me to even touch upon. It almost left me speechless, seriously. I cannot even play any clips of them because none of them will do it justice. Virtual Erase is the closest to a bad drug trip in music form. This might be the most experimental album I have ever heard. I cannot even begin to describe it, but it deserves to be mentioned. If you are curious about experimental music pushing itself to its limits, then this is the album for you. Pseudonyms are not dead yet. The same year he released 4 albums under the name K2, most popular being Chameleon Ballet. This is one of my favorite artworks because of the way this Pierrot guy's face is shown under 2 different angles. It reminds me of really old family photography. The way these glasses are drawn on remind me of Lead Mask Killers. As for the music itself, it sounds like dying or panicking in an avant-garde video game. The timing of when the scenes are pressed and the sounds make it sound goofy. Most of it is progressive electronic, which is a genre about fast electronic arpeggios that progress over time. And the last track is Encounter Area. I haven't read the titles when listening, but I knew from the way it sounds this is like encountering a boss enemy in a video game. It's a super chill and minimal, well, in Ferraro standards, down-tempo song with a slow and loud drum track. Now is a good time to talk about the elephant in the room, his album covers. His album covers are intentionally messy and campy. Low quality but never destructive or amateur, almost intentionally limited and hostile to the outside world. Low quality is only physical here, because the enjoyment value is high. So, to make an album cover, find images that seem like they could fit together, maybe slightly edit each image. Then, print them in black and white to mask all the flaws, and glue them on top of each other to make a collage. Now scan it back or draw something on top of it. It is simple to make images that look handsome even if you don't know how to draw. This violates every rule of design, yet he makes something better. A very underrated collab includes Sam Mehran, better known as Outer Limits Recordings. I have a lot of respect for Sam as a delightful singer and composer. Unfortunately, he passed away very recently. James himself even acted in a kind-hearted Sam's music videos about how happy he is to find a $20 bill lying on the street. Their collaboration is called 19210, which is an obvious reference to the long-running series Beverly Hills 19210, known worldwide as the exemplary California lifestyle among friends in the 90s. Courageously strong, roaring guitars over Ferraro's Sega Genesis drum machine gives unreal results. Strong enjoyment of this constant 2 electric guitar harmonies. This is Hypnagogic Pop at its fullest potential, a game about ninjas fighting and their bloody fists. The first 2 minutes of this is my favorite Ferraro segment from 2008 by far. I will once again raise the point that these albums happen in alternate worlds, because nothing in our world sounds exactly like this album. But this is the kind of music that heavy metal 70s cartoon characters would play before being blasted by electricity among treble-only gated drums. You know, G.I. Joe, Street Sharks, that fuzzy atmosphere. You can say it's Lamborghini Crystal but with less goofiness. Beginner recommended. Next is a bit of a funny one. We are already desensitized to how strange these are. Edward Flex presents Do You Believe in Hawaii? An exciting and pulsating and comic introduction of bird sounds with touching metallic sounds. We are in a gym along with extremely buff people, almost as if in a dream. That's why it's called hypnagogic. State half between dreaming and half between being awake. You cannot make music when you are asleep, and while it's not a technical challenge, sleep is the subconscious, so his albums are finished and fleshed out fever dream minute projects brought out to their conclusion.
thought seconds before losing consciousness can finally be experienced. Found in a hotel workout tape of sweaty bodybuilders deadlifting until perfection. The atmosphere is perfected with different sounds overlaid on top of each other. A visual collage but with sound, so you will hear men grunting, saying, "Oh man!" and screaming while listening to the music, improving it in a strange way.
Luckily, I was able to quickly sample my screams of pain.
So is it a gym or is it a rainforest? Mind you, these are non-random sounds but make sense within the song and add to it like an instrument would. Birds in places of whistles, grunts in place of synth pads, and why do the sounds keep growing? How big is this place? As one commenter described, this is an utopian future society where everyone is free to become as swole as possible. This cover is so advanced that there is a cover collage within a cover collage. An overly optimistic part similar to Marble Surf starts playing that makes me extremely happy and reminds me of walking up the stairs in a world that does not exist. Every time I hear it, I want to flex my muscles. This is impossible to create without at least a little bit of going into the mindset of your alias and what kind of interests and outlook on life he would have. Even better after comes smooth as water, high-pitched melody that improves upon the last one. Thing is, I don't think James Ferraro looks down upon these half-fictional archetypes he is creating. Quite the opposite. Of course, he does not have the blissfully unaware ignorance that his characters have, like Edward Flex. Quite the opposite, he is hyper-aware, and so with characters like Edward Flex, he is embracing the creative, unordinary way of living. In this case, of a bodybuilder with a slowed-down voice who touches barbed wire and has never enough metal lifting. If anything, Edward should be praised. At the end of the 31-minute-long song, there is one continuous, eye-opening bird added in. The pulsating ambience comes back with metallic sounds and modulated voices interacting with each other in all possible ways. With the way he uses pseudonyms that all hold completely different personalities and novel characters, he is like an actor that stars in different movies and children believe to be real. This is also beginner recommended, it is easy to listen to. Now we get to the best of the best, true classics of the genre. Last American Hero is an incredible album. It starts with an intentional, not annoying at all, low-pitched, audible static. And this is a musical portrayal of the mundane parts of a 90s American life. I'm talking driving down a long road, watching Discovery Channel on a small TV, going Best Buy shopping to buy chickpeas. It is a sincere, dry portrayal of America in the same way the film Gummo is, but without the gross parts. From the sound of the music alone, I get vivid visions of older people in a gated community who watch the news on TV every evening. That is how James himself described this project. Every song has fragile, fickle strings with a delay effect. This sound is very obviously a false emulation of a guitar that is actually electronic. James uses every sound's texture to his advantage. This melody could not have used a more appropriate sound than this synth. These very loud drums make the music much more enjoyable too, not to mention the excellent melodies. Now, hear how it intentionally builds up for almost 2 minutes just to suddenly cut to the next part out of nowhere, and immediately after 5 seconds cut to the next part. That's beautiful. Powerful electric amped up guitars on top of this completely regular life of a middle-aged truck driver standing at the gas station is something I could never have imagined could be expressed in music this well before. It is so impressive to convey a culture so easily through electronic sounds. That is why I prefer lo-fi works. He never uses the same synth or sound on 2 different albums before, which gives every work an extremely distinguishable personality. There can never be another Last American Hero. I sincerely believe this to be the best album to be released in the year 2008. Look at the cover. That's something that seems too mediocre to most to put on the cover. The famous chain store and the screenshot of Judge Judy at the bottom is like we're watching TV. This pioneered the genre ambient Americana. It felt good to listen, especially at the hypermarket in the mall, to look at the New Year presents with my mom and ended up only buying a ramen, looking at every toy and product without the goal to purchase them. This music is better the way it is, low quality. This is self-aware yet life-affirming, exactly how I aspire to be. Instead of being tired of the commodity, this album tells you, hey, Don't worry about standing at the parking for cars for too long. Don't worry about staying in the same house that bores you for decades. And don't worry about your routine being unexciting. Embrace it. Ending of the first part, called Headlines Access Hollywood, is my favorite part. The melody is impeccable. I strongly recommend you read the comment section to this album. It's almost an integral part. The second part, Adrenaline's End, has an endless small dream excitement, or lack thereof, which works too. It takes repetition to the extreme, with 20 minutes of the same echoed melody going on and on until the end of times. And it brings a sort of hypnosis, but not ritualistic or psychedelic, no. Instead, the same experience of hearing the same commercial as many times as someone who has TV playing constantly. And at this point, the adrenaline, the thrill ends. It's not exciting anybody anymore, but it keeps on going and going, as exciting as a theme park ride is for adults with anhedonia, trying to force a reaction out of oneself for this commodity. And to be perfectly clear, this is an excellent melody, so I do not mind hearing it go on for as long as it goes on. Next section fits more with the original album cover. Middle-aged men who bike in spare time and take photos. Mind you, this album came out in 2008 but captures the 90s perfectly. Adrenaline's End is the experience of falling asleep on a couch after binge watching History Channel for hours after a hot day of Best Buy shopping with your grandma. Put to sound. And this section has more knuckle-cracking, cigarette ash-thumping atmosphere. The last part is easily the most exciting one. It's pretty much authentic TV commercial music, the kind that's really good and only exists in the ad, but people in real life never listen to. Or a Mythbusters intro or old MTV bumpers. Every viewer understands at this point what I mean with Ferraro's music being difficult to describe without any associations. There really are not enough words to describe this, and I'm grateful for that, because music speaks for itself. This album too is beginner recommended. It only has the one long song in the vinyl version and two long songs on the tape version. We have finally reached the best part of the review. A year is so good for his output that it has a separate name for it. I present to you Summer Head Rush 2009. I need to refresh somehow. This year is just as rewarding as it is tiring. Not because it's bad, but because of the sheer ton of work there is. He opened a blog called Muscleworks Incorporated, which is a very interesting title. As you can already see, he has fully embraced the internet collage aesthetic, at this point not even making them black and white to hide how weird they look, and often using advertisements or family photos for album covers, not being afraid to look kitsch or unprofessional doing so, embracing how silly these look for the sake of art. It deeply touches me how carefully these covers are selected. Were they pictures chosen any differently, the mirage would break, so I sincerely consider these collages to be influential modern works of art in the digital age. Now let's talk about my most favorite James Ferraro album. iAsia, spelled like the iPhone. From the title alone we get 90s techno optimism. Imagine the entire continent of Asia being bought out by Apple. It's tongue-in-cheek about companies using the I from Apple products for bootlegs and looking cool, in the same way iCarly and iTwister from KFC does. iAsia is the first Ferraro's album that was for sure intentionally compressed and made low quality, evident by how the sound is more of a low bitrate MP3 and not a weird tape like his other albums. iAsia is probably my favorite album, but there is a big competition. If the world actually was how a late 90s to early zeros child who based their perception off of TV and comedy sci-fi films imagined the world to be, it would sound like iAsia. If there is a child somewhere whose only access to music is a Chinese toy with bit-crashed Eurodance songs and they listen to them out of love, then they truly lived in iAsia. What we get here are 3 extremely long MP3 files with random songs playing that sharply cut into each other without any fades. Does that sound similar to you?
107.7 XFM Radio Mars.
The kind of stuff that tries to be funny but ends up being uncanny.
Obviously, it's a parody of 2000's obscure radio broadcast which explains the song's length. Exceptionally original way to release an album, like it's a crappy uncut recording of a radio broadcast. So the songs are designed to make you believe they are not made by one person but are instead a random radio broadcast. What on earth is going on? The first section has many sounds being played at the same time with very shiny drums and prominent electric guitars that sound cool, but ultimately sounds like one commenter described a dream where you explore a McDonald's that has a water park as a playground. On the cover, a bouncy castle visibly edited onto a photo of Bangkok at night. It's a carefully organized silliness of Spider-Man toy digital cameras, sci-fi toys and neon vomit, but more than that, it's actually the early 2000s when low FPS videos of nostalgic series were shared online in 360p in WMV format, hence the quality. My favorite is the next section, very laid back, all sub-bass electronic drums that are clipping. Clipping is when the sound gets so loud that it breaks, usually unacceptable in music standards, but James breaks the rules once again. It is worth noting that it is never really looping in the same way marble surface, because this is Asia and in this world electric guitars are the most popular instrument worldwide. This part sounds like a Nickelodeon or a Disney Channel bumper that involves slime that should have lasted only a few seconds but was made into a full-length nightclub radio hit. This is backed up by the Minecraft water sound effect that plays the role of a drum that ends every musical phrase. I'm not joking. At the end of this section, an extremely gorgeous and sophisticated harmony starts to play among Minecraft water and clipping drums, yet the electric guitars don't stop, and so it gets very astonishing before suddenly cutting off. Notice how abrupt and immediate these musical cuts are. Last part of the 107.7 XFM Radio Mars plays a very neutral but a natural sounding electronic beat. Sounds of an emulation or artificial electronic music in the same way Last American Hero uses an artificial electronic guitar, but this is artificially electronic. It's clear that trying to rationalize or put Ferraro's music on paper is a failed battle because of how hard it is. But I persist and I will finish this review. In a way, aliens heard trance music in a Vietnamese night rave and tried to replicate it on Mars. This section has red light beeps of some sorts that sound like and never change throughout this entire thing. Bound to get annoying, right? No! It melts while you are falling asleep to a video game post-screen, be it Tekken 4 or Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. There are instruments that never change and instruments that do somehow progress and evolve in your imagination. It's so trippy. Realize this music is self-aware of how repetitive and plastic it is, so it uses that to its advantage and fullest potential. And all of this is night biking in Thailand in flow state. The next song takes the ridiculousness to the extreme with a well-produced hip-hop intro with incomprehensible lyrics because of how low quality it is. It blows up into a distorted, entirely clipping news intro with the Howie Scream sound effect. This is super funny. This song is called Happy HD Bengal, which is ironic considering how low quality it actually is. The music speaks to me a desire to be high quality while it can't. There are constantly weird vocal samples that sound like Hotel Mario soundtrack. Least expected part for me was the fake loading screen that says "Go through the next level" and then immediately stops to come back half a second later with a bell sound effect with a ba synthetic voice brought back. Our life is inside a video game. Living in iAsia would be like living in Idiocracy by Mike Judge in a funny way, with video game sound effects blasted on the street and this being the highest quality technology can afford. Cannot believe his music is almost over 20 years old now. Here it's hyper aware of the culture it's inspired by, flash games such as early Newgrounds or even Club Penguin. It is hard to believe it actually came out in 2009. Do you get how meta this satirical alternate reality releases for its time? Obviously this attempts to emulate the feeling of finding an old YouTube video with 15 views that is a DJ mix or is a recording of a radio broadcast. Around the world obscure homemade music. This is the gamelan part, and it does sound like a wedding or a triumphant ceremony, albeit recorded with a phone camera from the sound of it, and we cannot see the footage either. There are even voices on a non-existent language screaming axioms out of excitement. I wish I lived in Asia. This is great. This is a sublime electronic interpretation of Balinese gamelan. Let's relax for a while and listen to a nature documentary based on a famous 90s magazine airing on Animal Planet. That is how I can describe this part, and the very last part of Happy HD Bengal, which is still going, absolutely exciting and energetic part with drums all over the place, some too late, some too soon, almost as if played live by a big band, actually just sequenced electronics, releases all its powerful, entirely danceable masterpiece, exaggerates his ideas to the extreme in Asia work. I hear sci-fi Disneyscapes with exaggerated sound effects, go, 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 revolution, and riser, but amplified to such a degree that it gives strong emotions with a meta taste. I was reading about Jean Baudrillard's hyperreality, a reality where no one knows what's real and what is a simulation, and it doesn't really matter there, so reality and fiction blend together and science become reality. This world wants to be childish in order to make us believe that the adults are elsewhere in the real world, and to conceal the fact that true childishness is everywhere, that is that of the adults themselves who come here to act the child in order to foster illusions as to their real childishness. I got instantly reminded of Asia reading this, specifically the ending of Happy HD Bengal, but this song is just the best and makes me extremely happy. With some drums being a little early and some a little too late, this song in the same way as riding on a fast bus and looking out the window, Super Saiyan mode. Casino Neptune presents the beginning of the end with grand City 17 virtual god structure singing chants. This is awesome. The harmonic text-to-speech vowel filter, due to low quality and just the right amount of reverb, creates a subtle harmony. It sounds like a synthesized voice. I seriously think the low quality is bringing out extra harmonies to the sound. These futuristic voices blast outside at a major space. A swimmer is seen on a jumbotron with the catchphrase, "Just live." This is masterfully crafted. I'm getting chills from this. Later comes a very long ice drink commercial section, and it ends with authentic flash game music with the exact same compression, sound quality and instruments usually used in Newgrounds games, something you could hear in a basketball flash game with lots of gradients, but the word authentic should be used with caution when it comes to James Ferraro. Asia shares similarities in technological optimism for electronics and cyberpunk here, as movies like Nowhere 1997 and Double Team are more well known, Tron and Killer Clowns from Outer Space, but removal of the horror. But ultimately it embraces the absurdity of collective mindset at the time. Common household internet wasn't even a decade old at that point, almost, and he already nailed it and intentionally used digital compression for aesthetic purposes. How on Mars does this sound exactly how cheap plastic feels? All of these associations I brought out is why his albums are really intuitive. Trying to get back the feeling of when you were a kid and playing ultra-specific arcade games that you cannot feel the same way anymore, so with aesthetics you over-exaggerate it to the point that it looks, sounds, or is satirical. I'm okay with that and think it can yield some fun results, and a lot, if not most of James' work is exactly like that. A hyperreality of sorts. Hyper is an overdone. Beginner recommended. I believe in Asia and we're already there. I'm on the Asian train of thought right now, so let's review albums that are most similar to it while my thoughts are still fresh. The classic tabloid sensationalizing album Wild World, a stretched out bad quality license plate photo as the cover has the same themes as Asia except 90s California and a lot more rock oriented. This album has intermissions of strange and off-putting 90s news about celebrity gossip, Heaven's Gate suicide cult, and of course the McDonald's Big Mac. This album is not focused on electronics, but when it is electronic, it is not as wacky as Asia, yet it has its own way of sounding. That is the power of Summer Headers 2009, because every album sounds entirely different, and then he just drops what he did and does something else entirely. My favorite part is when a cough gets sampled. This is a weird case of a musician sampling himself, sampled so strangely that I can see it being featured on America's Funniest Home Videos, somebody coughing in a video, and the hosts edited an uncanny track from it using real and cool electric guitars, with, I'll admit, not plastic Asian but still strange electronics, and combine that with the famous rock and roll song Long Tall Sally, but made out of awkward cows. That's the good way to describe Wild World. Awkward, with some sound stuttering and most not. The next song actually has an official music video which I can explain as California, but only according to TV and magazines from 90s Special Magic Fingers issue. That is Wild World, B-movies and their embrace of absurdity manifested into music. The fruitiness is perfect, it fits the hypnagogia better than just a normal video, because it's a camera recording of a TV screen. Esoteric inspirations for sure, it's less specific things from these movies and more their atmosphere captured well somehow. The beginning of the second track invokes an esoteric feeling I experienced before, yet find difficult to describe. The closest I can describe is a transition slide on a 19th celebrities gossip talk show extended to a full-length track to the point of uneasiness. I love this beat and what James Ferraro is doing and could not imagine it done better. But I imagine something like this playing in a Jinx Tango or a Kimberly Cubus game. There are parts that sound like a point-and-click edutainment game featuring a dolphin when you click on the Wii Bubble machine or dig the skeleton lady's treasure chest underwater. But I'm also reminded of Nickelodeon Click-a-Magic Flash games. Hacker Track. One of his albums you have to soak into the mindset to enjoy. So the concept for this one is super easy to grasp. Hacker scenes in movies where they slam a bunch of buttons made into an album, there you go. And this was released on vinyl. The cover is actually an advertisement for Oakley's MP3 glasses, which have headphones in them, as featured on Dunk Pots. It starts with a bunch of keys getting smashed. I cannot stop laughing at this concept. Keys getting pressed while the hacker hacks into the Pentagon and AOL chat messages sound effects come in. How can you even think of making something like this? There are water Minecraft sound effects, but this time with a man fainting or grasping for air. As funny as this is, I must admit these sounds are very impressive. I cannot really figure out what they are, but they attempt to sound like a computer sound effects or unwanted noise that happens while hacking on the computer, which is just crazy cool to make music out of something like that. But really, it does not get more cyberpunk than this. Super immersive. I feel this influenced net art as such, deliberately crafting what is usually unwanted noise with the scrummiest looking artwork possible to make something that I actually really enjoy. No, really, I listen to Hacker Track occasionally. One really catchy part is the beginning of a second track with a clipping heartbeat. That with the incomprehensible voices and typing into the matrix sounds on the other side. Then is a hard to hear unless you are wearing headphones, coily, bassy part that sounds like this across eagles flying and more water sounds. But the ending, while it probably tries to sound funny and done in the laziest way possible, is mind-boggling. It tries to sound sloppy and lazy while clearly it's not, calculated on the keyboard, but it uses the THX logo sound among... I'm not going to seriously describe Hacker Track and what it consists of. That will be absurd, and not the good kind of absurd. But these are deliberate imitations of sounds that could have existed anywhere else before but never were until James began making them on the keyboard. And so he made albums that sound like something a lowest budget possible haunted house would record as background audio, Son of Dracula. Not only are the sounds low budget and handcrafted, but the ideas are as well. And I believe this original answers to what kind of albums to make them so creative. KFC City 3099 Part 1 Toxic Spill. It's hard to listen to his older music and not at least smile at the humor. What's cool about these albums is you can make up your own stories in your head while listening to them, without fail every time. Ferraro has wasted hours of my life on daydreaming a different time alive to his music, instead of getting things done. I always saw KFC City as an attempt to create a city with worst possible living conditions. Cartoonishly dystopian robot sounds everywhere you go. Everybody speaks in slowed down voices. 99 cents are a luxury and the best food is literally a rat burger. Easy to get molten alive. The titles alone are already cinematic, but this album is actually an audio movie. It has dialogue, sound effects and everything a movie should have except the video. The movie does not actually exist, but this is creepy as hell. Also funny. Drones similar to K2 slowed down Edward Fleck's voices with gunshots, surreal and seemingly inspired by trash outsider movies like Bad Taste. What blows my mind about this is KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, inspired Ferraro to create KFC City 3099 Part 1 Toxic Spill. Part 2, if you're wondering, was never released. It's similar to Cruelty Squad, And Ferraro is making a video game called Desolation Seed that might get released soon, and it seems to be very inspired by Cruelty Squad. So please leave a comment if you want me to play his game once it comes out. But back to KFC City, this is a fever dream and the scary kind with ambulances and screams everywhere. I wish I could say more, but I lack my vocabulary. I don't want to spoiler more of this, and this actually has a story, but the last song has the most beautiful, purely ambient Ferraro work with water droplet sound effects somewhere.
Genie headgears in the Tower of Dreams, Jester's Midnight Toys, and so surprise, black and white albums are back. This is a great cover of James because it looks almost like a real photo, a screenshot of an old FMV game, and nobody except James himself can know what is going on in this image. Scriptural chaos entranced among rubber ducks, which keeps the whole thing from disintegrating. Hallucinogenic dreams with genies. God only knows what these genies want and what their purpose is. There's a rather sad attempt here to convey childhood innocence and save it with midnight toys, but everything is covered in hail of noisy synthesizers. Poured out is the ever-raising gatefall that rattles glitches in real life, abruptly cut to a scene of a temple inside a train station made of incense and trance-immersed fantasy. 13 minutes in, another hard cut, something really powerful happens, but I cannot even imagine what it is. It is indescribably amusing. The longest part has a simple, kingly medieval melody that would play in an old video game, but it plays at different speeds and intervals. Personally, it sounds more like being a kid in your bed and listening to your dad play old FMV adventure games, not wanting to see him play but being forced to imagine what is happening from muffled speakers alone. Honestly, it is one of the more overwhelming albums. The walls of sound are so detailed, it took me multiple attempts to understand what I was hearing until I was satisfied. In the end, we get what I call a demented, toxic spill marching band. After 40 minutes, we get fantasy in its purest form, an exploration of the Tower of Dreams where the jester finally shows off his toys, and we get total bliss, startling enough to daydream and not stop listening. 3 minutes later, we enter a Chinese theater commercial about opening a door in the purest, melancholic MIDI synthesizers. Just a few seconds later, I heard something so beautiful that it almost left me speechless. This part gets stuck in my head very often. It sounds oddly emotional, thanks to the strong hitting rain with church bells outside, clipping the audio barrier, incense burning, and safe inside the tower acting like a skull. Musicians use fade outs to signify a part of the song ending. What Ferraro does is do the same thing with his sections and make the sound repetitive enough, yet cut them abruptly to signify a song going on forever. So I think these songs are so long and end abruptly because they could last forever longer in the world of the album that Ferraro is making. Ferraro's not making this. He is a guide. Ferraro is a guide whose job is to travel to alien worlds unbeknownst to anyone else and transfer these two albums. I feel this way because of how different each album is.
Another favorite album of mine is Rerex. 2 happy albums with 2.5 hours of excellence, which smells of salt water and mouthwash, and photo inserts from a cheaply produced toy franchise. Rerex is one of the few albums of his to have 2 parts, and they are equally as good. First of all, the sound quality here is amazing because the reverb makes you believe that the recording was performed in an empty swimming pool. Only Marble Surf has similar reverb but not the same. This is a truly astounding new age album with a tribal style of drumming. In all hypnagogic style, James drums away on a Casio SK1 synthesizer with preset sounds, DVD menu sounds, or of arcade games set up near the aquarium at an entertainment venue. And the reverb helps that idea because it's a narrowed glass capsule, the kind of thing that visitors go through to see fish inside the room. Water spilling, complex and fascinatingly changing melody they play, which is fresh and exciting like swimming, ends with a telepathic communication of the dolphins, constantly and smoothly rising amongst harsh but clueless drums is the first untitled song's essence. It's a carnival. As you can see by the album cover, it is a professional photo of rays in a frame of plastic. I never really thought about how special rays are before this album, but I think this song is the peak of all of his electronic melodies. Next section sounds fragile well as glass. As I said, sound texture is incredibly important element, and only James leads his sounds to their logical conclusions. Self-sampling is an important shtick on this album. He makes mouth noises resembling animals, grunts, and processes and chops them in a nuanced way. Repetition plays a major role in this album as well. Unlike his ritualistic albums we talked of before, here the repetition is more gentle, more playful. I mean, maybe it sounds like doing a ritual inside the CD-ROM puzzle game with FMV clips, but that's a stretch. Those mouth noises are almost deliberately fantastic. Each one has different effects and speed applied to it. One of them, with increased bass through this lo-fi filter, authentically sounds like water entering a mouth underwater. Of course he did not record it in water, who knows, maybe he did, but I highly doubt that. My point is, to record fictional fish singing sounds this deliberately, you need some kind of self-assurance to get into this ultra-specific mindset. This underwater gulping sound proceeds slowly to evolve and take the stage and become this part's entire percussion. As it progresses, the whistly synths take a more worrying key, and small details like this is exactly why James is so wonderful to listen to. There are slight details to everything, and every loop on the sampler has mindful changes throughout the song, which make any loop exciting to listen to, even since his first album. Of course it sounds like James, but if you listen to Lamborghini Crystal first, then this, you will never guess that they were made by the same person, because of their uniqueness. So Rerex could have been made by a Japanese water park designer who was hired to compose music for an upcoming children's resort. At this point I realized there are not enough genres in this world. Just calling this new age or ambient or even hypnagogic pop does not really do it justice to explain how this sounds well enough. Oh, I forgot to say that he made this album inspired by visions he got after choking himself. That makes sense, because when you are low on breath you get momentary visuals and thoughts that are not full-fleshed yet, and so they are out of this world with their surrealness in the same way hypnagogia is. Or a fever dream. And the reverb helps that idea because it's a narrowed glass capsule, the kind of thing that visitors go through to see the fish inside the room. And this is Ferraro's most engaging and danceable section by far. In the first part we were being introduced to the gulp becoming the master drum, and now this is the main instrument, and drums sound like a toy, don't they? How ingenious it is to make a full-fledged music from recordings of your voice on a synthesizer. But I'm enjoying myself to this piece and imagining stingrays dancing and how it is for them to live in chlorine. And this album translates all the pleasure a fishy gets from swimming into a humanly universal language, music. Spacey reverberated sounds allows for great acoustics. But the next part, wow! It sounds like turning on an old Macintosh computer, so I ran to look for operating system sounds online, and as you might expect, it's a sample. But I like these sounds even better in this quality. I knew it subconsciously when I listened to that part of Redex. I thought, how did he make that sound? That sounds like an old computer startup. This is excellent. I still consider his lo-fi work pretty much entirely original, cause sampling a computer startup, news for a few seconds, movie scream in such original ways, and most random of sound effects into music is pretty transformative. The sample fits in with the rest of the track because Redex entirely sounds like a compilation of some aquarium software sound effects recorded through a terrible microphone near a water drain. This ambient piece is soothing after dance of grandiose sound. The next two parts that end track 2, Untitled. You see, these electronic instruments manage to be preset sounding. What I mean by that is every synthesizer has built-in presets that were pre-set, right? That will give you a ready-to-go sound without much tinkering or configuration. For example, electronic music that requires the least tinkering and messing are MIDI files, played through Windows Player, okay? And so these Redex sections to me sound like they are imitating presets. I believe these are original sounds recorded on the Casio keyboard but messed around with to sound as close to presets as possible, thus making them sound uncanny. These are just impressions I get for RX2. Does the sequel hold up or not? But so far, this album is a soundtrack to an Animal Planet sort of show that will air on Da Vinci Kids that will mostly consist of almost unedited animal footage and have a voiceover from a funny sounding sock puppet voice actor. Stoned and careless drums among mad, almost angry melodic parts make it so. The next part is an Aqua Park commercial, definitely the most normal and conventional rock drum since Edward Flex. I can imagine a voiceover talking about the water park of your dreams to this music instantly, splashing water all over sincere childhood fun and the desire to feel just as excited as you were back then. See, these are the hauntological and nostalgic themes that I can hear in all of his 2009 music. Then plays the longest and most repetitive part with a slow down voice that sounds wet, and this part is very long. And I honestly don't see a flaw in that, because while it does not change or progress enough to be adequately justified to last as long as it does, the more I listen, the more ways I find to enjoy it. Similarly to Clear, the electric guitar in the background keeps this piece interesting and changes to play different melodies very often, but it keeps it on the edge. One thing I also noticed is when I try head bobbing on time to this piece, I lose the pace when it repeats and feel like I am jumping to a rhythm that started differently from what I was originally jumping to, so it creates a fun dissonance. With this specific part, it makes me think of this album as walking or swimming around an art exhibit, where for each piece, these parts play forever, and whoever was exploring and recording RX decided to stay at that particular piece for 20 minutes before leaving to the next. Consider every room in your house and having speakers playing different yet similar musics like this, and slowly walk around and you will understand what I mean. The same sample ends the first untitled song of RX2. In that part specifically, Macintosh Startup is put together with a non-existent shutdown sound effect. Alternating between the two didn't make me question sampling. Lyrics will probably be best for vinyl because 3LP and room for spacey reverberated sound allows for great acoustics. I want you to look at the back cover of the record. It has these early Ferraro racket black and white alternate covers of the same manta rays, which makes me believe the sweet lie that RX is a 3-hour soundtrack for a non-existent nature video that nobody has ever seen. Track 2 begins with what is for many the best part of the album. The drum pattern is impeccable, up and down flowing synth melody that is guaranteed to end with a harmony with slight vibrato, so it sounds like human voice. From memory, this is the fastest BPM on the album, so it gets the uplifting mood across while hypnotizing listeners. Most head bobbable RX part? James is not only mastering melody but also harmony here. What comes next is a dolphin laughing transition, Mac included, and excellent percussion. Then, just Casino Neptune from iAsia, but with tribal drums. Well, I didn't expect it to end with iAsia, but that is like meeting an old friend after a long time once again. And briefly, on the last section of track 2, it's really outstanding. The last song is, surprising. It's a peaceful drone that sounds very old. An IBM computer trying to boot up. Its harmonies are the computer's soul, put into one continuous ambient sound. That is actually a melody made out of a harmony to relax to. And then, when you least expect it, authentic sounding tribal drums come in. And this makes the warped synth the most mythological part of RX series. What do you think comes next to top it all off, huh? A string toy. This is something that the first song of Clear lacks. Beginner recommended for sure. My mind is blown. I find it hard to believe that someone in our day and age can put so much deliberate energy towards thinking of strangest concept possible and putting esoteric wet-eye fever dream visions on music that anybody can listen to. He cannot make any weirder albums than "Allow me to introduce myself." On 12th of April, he releases 3 very long albums, all with the same title, Jarvid 9. If there were 8 other Jarvids each a trilogy, I would faint. But actually the 9 in the title is a joke. I think of it as a soundtrack for a non-fiction black and white movie about a broomstick named Jarvid, which had 9 parts, and part 9 was split into 3 parts, except only audio was left. Let's start with the most important and surreal one, Jarvid 9.
Gecko.
I still consider Jarvid to be the name Jarvis, but with a spelling mistake. This music takes pride in using the least recognizable sounds possible, making it entirely alien. The CD song titles are also in alien language. The beginning is made with James saying, "Hey!" repeated on a really really high note of the synthesizer among a slowed down kalimba sound. The beginning alone is very expressive, and if you know a little about music, it is satisfying to listen and try to make out how it was made. There is an impressive order in this chaos, the kalimba repeating with a pattern that you can always expect to come. This, among with high progressive electronic keys similar to the band Emeralds, except with the pace of holy minimalism, create a colorful and detailed environment that you can see on the album cover. Next part has sampled aliens singing together with a more or less normal constant tribal drum being hit. There are also slightly beat-crushed birds chirping, similarly to the game LSD Dream emulator, and the funniest of all is a high-pitched alien voice saying "Spoon, spoon!" This is an entirely mind-blowing musical environment that tries to emulate tribal ambient, except if it was made on another planet, where these sounds are as common to us humans, to them as guitars are for us. This is true science fiction, but not in an Asian way. Rather, I spent a while thinking what movies feel like this, and there are none. But the closest film humans made that resembles Jarvid 9 is A Page of Madness. Before the end of the first song, there is a strong machinery noise, so I guess he decided to print his album covers while recording this. Anyways, the rhythms do make strong sense somehow and are surprisingly head-bobbable. You can clearly hear ribbits coming from jumping frogs. Oh, how many sounds there are at once, and they all make sense in one rhythm, genuinely. I listen to this often and it makes me feel good when I want to hear something new. This is hyper creative and is what new inventive music is. I genuinely believe this might be the next subculture, surrealists. This is just the best collage I have ever seen. This might be constructed entirely out of stock photos for all I know, but this is a well-developed character that I can tell feels and has feelings just like a sci-fi doll, except this is just a gecko in a robe with a vacuum cleaner head that is reminiscent of a broomstick. This is what surrealism in paintings is all about. Intent placements of objects in a way that seems impractical to the average human. Tough world building. The next song is incredibly punchy and has a strong percussive track established immediately. This sounds like an automatically compressed and equalized 19-minute Terminator chase scene being played from a flip-flop phone. Snares are gunshots or explosions, that's how punchy they are. Among the way, the song slowly progresses and gets trance-inducing and hypnotic the more you listen to it. Among the way, important choir melodies appear that sound simple compared to anything else on the album, yet magnificent. It also sometimes has an offbeat cartoon sound effect, like when a character gets hit with a frying pan. I also feel like some of the melodies that come in try to emulate digital compression artifacts. An intense yet satisfying psychedelic drum track once again is surprisingly danceable. But the end may surprise you. A sad and touching to the heart synthesizer melody that is reminiscent of departure. I can hear faint train tracks coming and imagine an emotionally edited culmination of something happening to the main character, Jarvid, after years of walking in the desert, finally encounters an oasis and meets amphibians there, so he is happy about what happened. This album is the logical conclusion to James Ferraro's weird work. I did not expect this cinematic part, but the next track is just funny. This is the clearest example of using a vocal sample played on a synthesizer at different pitches. You can clearly hear this is the same sound saying ribbit freely played the keyboard to sound like many frogs. This song, as any other, evolves to have a fair yet ragged drum beat. To describe this series, it's strange and incomprehensible to humans, but enjoyable. So where did he get the inspiration to make this? How did he even think of making this? The fifth song has a whistle melody, hold on with occasional out of pattern yet expected sounds, like cartoon walking sound effects, and ultra atmospheric owl eye laser sounds, squeezed out toothpaste packets. This is music made out of sounds that do not actually exist, and out of nowhere a wonderful melody with a choir of geckos after. Short segment in the last song that sounds like rattly grudges and has a deep oh sound in the bass. It's very clear and danceable, and uses a kalimba to end every loop. We went a long way since Last American Hero, haven't we? For the last 30 or so minutes I have the clearest visions. It is this large room with acoustics with a virtual sound effect and occasional shimmering water harmony. Every time I listen to this I hear something new. This is a life-changing album. What I clearly picture hearing this is a large casino with many alien geckos inside playing on the pachinko machines and gambling their life savings away, and tens of these machines are being played at the same time, so you get these gorgeous sounds of addiction. And the thing is, the sound quality sounds exactly like an old VHS video but without the footage, and this goes to the entire album, and the sound keeps escalating with more and more sounds added onto it. You get soaked into the atmosphere listening until it's hard to take it in. At some point, fictional voices, male and female, come in to say words in an unknown language. This is the most surreal album ever made. I don't know how you can create this in your bedroom while living day-to-day life. This is an entire world with its own rules and sounds released on a disc. This is no amateur anymore. This is mastery and should be ideally studied in sound design and music schools to show how different and crafty sounds can get. Jarvid 9 Kavajar race is undeniably more evil. Even from the start alone I can hear a clear theme in it of ancient civilizations and war. Ultra detailed breath drone greets us, leading to a crowd screaming some common saying. Then, a memorable part that sounds like an atmospheric indie game with smooth voice falling melody. Latter half of the song is too insane for me to remember much about. It has Arabic sounding tribal drums together with a kalimba and a rising voice sample on the same beat. Near the end is a voice crying in the wilderness. It immediately cuts into a continuous siren panic microwave drone and a voice announcement over a loudspeaker which goes like whoa, 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 whoa. I guess this is a war announcement. Another part I listen to often is this. It has sparkling electronic sounds that don't even sound like electronic music at this point, but instead it's pretty much just, just the casual normal alien spaceship technology and the natural sound pressing buttons on the pad to configure something makes. The sound feels the same as drinking sparkling water and burping after. The use of delay effect to build the melody is also very interesting. It can be compared to the logical thought process of trying to remember something and jumping through thoughts randomly without even thinking about it. But 7 fragile songs that are meant to be made by an alien race really excites me. I really enjoyed the part that samples what sounds like a burp into a sick beat made entirely out of dead mouth sounds, harmonies. This sounds like plunderphonics or music that is obviously made almost entirely out of sampling other music. Except there is no sample, so it is made to sound like an obvious sample. I don't know, do you hear any humor in this music? I do, despite its grim vibe. I find it to be tongue-in-cheek in essence. But this is a rave, it is so powerful and effective to its fullest potential. In the second half of the album, a smooth and fixated in its pulse, nonchalant ambient loop comes in. The loop is super short and obvious, but this track, lasting more than 30 minutes, manages to work with this short loop all the way until the end, improving it with various others seamlessly fitting it harmonies and water sounds, even coughs and speeches among heavenly brief screeches. This is one of the rare Jarvid 9 songs you can relax and meditate to. And I'll end it with that. I don't know how to feel about Jarvid 9 Flashpipe, but my opinion is generally positive. The only thing I can say about this one is it is more gentle, smooth, and cold and vast than the other 2 albums. It also uses less unrecognizable sounds, and Gyoko, strangely enough, I consider to be appropriate and beginner recommended. But there is a part in the middle of the album which makes my eyes open wide for some reason. It has nostalgic sentimental scenes almost caving and crashing in front of me, while I am trying to launch a machine and remember memories while traveling inside my head at the same time. All of this is very weird and I need more pop music. And this has been his 2009 output, ranging from evil aliens to new age aquarium manager, all sound like they were made by different people living under completely different circumstances. Only a genius could create this. 2010 starts with a progressive electronic album, Pixarny, that tries to put vintage CG or 3D videos into electronic and space ambient and does it well, in the same style as Jean-Michel Jarre, Klaus Schulze, Tangerine Dream, Michael Stearns, and so on. In seconds, we will talk about 2010, and let me tell you, it's even more experimental and less expected than the Jarvid 9 trilogy. If you don't know what it is, you'll probably smile right now. To put it bluntly, James Ferraro made a pop album in 2010. Almost with no twists, he became an authentic glam rock star of the 80s, except in 2010, when electronic music was already on the rise. So it's a brilliant subversion of expectations when you think that after Jarvid 9 his works will be weirder and less human, but not! He poured out all the joy of girlish optimism from an era long gone. It's trippy, yet sweet tooth positive, and for that reason I made up my mind that it's my favorite album. Just read the official description of this album. On the album cover, he changed his whole style to bad boy leather jacket, and he tries to sing and look like a woman. You can see chroma keyed static akin to music videos of that era with an MTV parody Hell TV logo. The first song is called Dollhouse Frotteur, gleezy, soul-warring, dreamy guitars. Once again, the main component of music becomes exaggeration. He takes every idea he has to the extreme and this album shows it. This is the biggest reason why this album is uncanny to some people. It's not normal enough to be on the radio, but not weird enough to be freaky. But I accept everything this album stands for. To add to the definitely intentional dreamy ice cream childish quality, the singer's anxious voice is mixed way too quiet and so the lyrics are impossible to make out with this sound quality. The first 2 minutes already demonstrate breathtaking creativity. It ends with just the best harpsichord melody and harps akin to Valentine's Day specials. The harpsichord somehow demonstrate a childlike innocence of playing with pound puppies and building imaginary kingdom out of them. I'm sincerely disturbed by how good this is, because in context of James's discography, this might have been made as a joke. Britney's Gum starts off with somebody chewing and spitting gum and has 2 different parts. This reminds me of early MTV animation of different styles that are united by originality, and true to its wackiness, tough youth maximalism, smoking hot guitars, gated drums, and bad girl, the kind of music a drowned squirrel would rock out to through a stereo in a badass retro cartoon short. I honestly deem this flawless. Leather High School just sounds really like an 80s sitcom intro. This time the lyrics are audible and they are provocative and uneasy in the same way video mixtapes from Everything Is Terrible are. It's this art collective which finds wild garbage 80s to 90s tapes in video stores, then simply just cuts everything that is unentertaining or boring. And the result is fun yet awkward to watch. This album is found footage video art except translated to audio. Expectedly enough, James Ferraro made a video mixtape himself called Rapture Adrenaline, but Leather High School is the hit song that could have been a single. It's super catchy and how he manages to sing in this voice is crazy to me. I love it deeply. Buffy Hunger Books Answering Machine beginning sounds exactly like a Coming Up Next, Beverly Hills 192010, Will Brenda Finally Quit Smoking, or Coming Up Next, Pee-wee's Playhouse. Lipstick on Ants is a masterpiece of electronic sound that uses the never used today Moog synthesizer under the genre Moogsploitation, common in the 70s with musicians such as Mort Garson and Jean-Jacques Perry. This I can hear being used in a Soviet cartoon where the main character will be transported into space or some kind of a portal. I never thought I would hear somebody use a Moog synthesizer this well as late as 2010. It is clear and evident that James is moving into a pop direction from this album halfway through, because there is no stuttering or hard cuts here, except occasionally, unlike his Summer Headrest 2009 albums. Here, songs fade out normally. Killer Nerd is this album's most serious and rewarding rock song. I like to think this is a fictional band that only exists in other media that is called Night Dolls. May I compare this with I'm Jammer Lemmy's Milk Can or something that will be played in The Sims. And I adore that. Strip away all the concepts and associations and it's still just good and enjoyable music. Ending of the song gets crazy and has a coolness in the air, reminiscent of Edward Flex. These lyrics are extremely funny, especially I dyed my hair green, I walked around town, everyone thinks I'm a freak. State of the art stuff. I'd thrive in Nine Dolls since it's an 80s horror B-movie where adults talk like teenagers, or it's a romantic prom night movie, The Party, Grease, or Beverly Hills. It has the same ridiculousness as My Stepmother is an Alien or Hobgoblins, but exaggerated to such an extent that it might be dismissed by some as a random noise. On Mars, James might still be a teenager. Roses and Mystery. At this point, if you are not enjoying the album, you will probably turn it off in rage. This is the most kitschiest and cute song Ferraro has ever done, with Valentine's Day harps, pretty much a song for people as excited as the kids in the Japanese 80s dolls commercials. At this point it's just a Sunday morning cartoon about superheroes destroying the forces of evil with laser eyes like Thunder the Barbarian. Can you believe this is the same guy who made the Skaters? If the song Movie Monster was a smile, it would be the Cheshire Smile. Christmassy sleigh bell and singing about everyone coming together and grabbing popcorn to watch movies. But it ends with an amazing melody that could play in a 90s high energy aerobic workout tape starring women like Cece Cage or Sandra. Radio Herup is a simulation of flipping through radio channels, and 3 parts of this song are the most beautiful songs he ever made. Do you know what Lost Wave is? It's music that is unidentified and unknown, even after being heard by thousands of people, usually recorded onto a bad tape in only a few seconds. This song has the exact same atmosphere of a Lost Wave song, except many of them in one song. This section is so good it makes me want to cry. This Naughty Scientist magazine's cartoon outro guitar with jumping faced blob sound effects is wistful and extremely charming. There is also a Tropical Jungle 90s CD-ROM game dinosaur moment that only lasts seconds. James, how? You are way too good at this. This is music that is self-aware about being nostalgic. Probably the best example of Hauntology. It ends with an ending scene to a romance film and delivers upon expectations, similar to the kind of music that Tonetta would make. Lost in memory, and so it sounds like a looped chorus to a really good song that never was. Coincidentally, it also came out in the same year Echo Gems released. Obviously, this one is beginner recommended. Bamboo for 2 by Monopoly Child Star Searchers is an ultra-relaxing vacation album with tribal drums and playful royale synthesizers. Instant relaxation and makes me feel splendid, and 2010 will be known as the pop year. Feed Me is similar to Night Dolls, but it is closer to Lamborghini Crystal. But these comparisons sound redundant, as no 2 James Ferraro albums sound exactly alike. As evident by the black and white album cover, it's a lot weirder, but it's still awesome, more lo-fi, arcade and phased. This album has a lot of Rocky Horror Show kind of monologue. It starts with "Welcome to my playhouse!" There is also the same trend of Radio Herup to have multiple songs in one, but not randomly ordered cuts like, say, in Rerex. Instead, the songs with multiple sections feel connected by a similar sound and often held together by repeating leitmotifs. But it gets so complicated that some songs feel like I listen to a full EP yet it's just one song. With these albums he manages to border between weird and listenable in the most thought out way possible. Heaven's Open Late Tonight sounds almost a little too much like a melodramatic Chinese folk song. I most enjoyed a short track, Bad Toys, Zit TV Goes to Hell, which is all wrecked and gained up treble, Motel Christmas, and Paranoid Couch Potato, which is freaky dance music, something that JCPV could groove out to. And the album ends with a meme ear rape toilet flush. Our next album will be his last before a major event that will suddenly happen in 2011. The amount of different albums he made of consistently good quality is shocking. On Air has 2 versions, a 2011 remaster and the original 2010 release. I prefer the remaster, but the versions are different. They take out and add different songs, so they can be considered 2 separate albums. It starts with a whoopee cushion and balloon round synths that sound repeating, with almost singing screechy synths on top of it. I should note this whole album's sound quality is special, sounding like it's being played from a bad speaker, with mostly all mids and almost no treble at all, and compressed so much that you can hear electric static, so this may be hard to listen for some. Despite being detailed and skeuomorphic like the bubblegummy album cover, I don't find anything weird about these scenes at all. Oh yeah, and the album is also credited to James Ferraro. This is pretty funny and the artwork is magnificent. I don't know what the style is called, but I have seen it before. Art on the side of carnival rides might do. I don't have enough words to describe the sound of this album, I entirely admit. But it's super chill rock that just so happens to be noisy, yet just as energetic, if not more alive than his other 2010 albums. Being lo-fi for it works. Have you ever heard those radio introductions which sound like you're listening to Radio Rock's Radio Rock Show? But it's these sound effects and music samples played together to remind you which FM radio station you are listening to. They were also often parodied, as evident with 107.7, but they never really lasted more than 10 seconds. But the song Electrocuted Hair takes that idea and makes it into a full-length song among Rerex 2 intro type beat. Flashy Kamikaze blasts me with loud and overwhelming drums, so I expect something like Britney's Gum, On air is probably great to listen to on the vinyl. Hearing the bassy drums on the 2011 remaster, instead this becomes a pop song and drums become secondary with the catchy chorus singing about a radio again. Most impressive are the last seconds with a very high-pitched Beach Boys type of harmony, singing the same chorus but jumping a key higher. Beach Blonde Elvis is my favorite song and I find it hard to explain why. It has ultra noticeable progressive electronics where each progression fades in and fades out before changing entirely with something added or removed. It again has the slightly phased, entirely rhythmic pyong arpeggios made out of differing synths. If transmission beeps or alarm clock sounds were made into music, so different from any kind of arpeggios I am used to that I did not even recognize them as such. There is also this cute animal singing harmony because similar to any movie logos. You know, there are whole YouTube communities of kids who watch and edit obsessively the same few TV logos before or after a movie or a cartoon starts. If you took a movie logo and made a full-length song out of it, it would be this. This is why nothing else really sounds like it. There are these sounds that haunt and follow us since childhood, but they last on average 4 seconds. These are either TV logos or operational system sound effects. And so Jim makes his take on it into a full-length song that lasts minutes, which is why it sounds weird to almost all who listen to it. But this is ultra progressive electronics. It progresses so much that by the end of it, it's an entirely different song. And so this album is full of these shooty, as I described, balloon synths. New Waver from Hawaii Saturn starts with a Rerexian brah sort of part, but in turn is a sequel to Beach Blonde Elvis in its ultra progressivity, because it's like 3 or 4 songs in one. Every song inside New Waver sounds transitional and wavy. It's a great song, but I get a general positive energy from it. Cinderella is the hit song all hip aliens clap and listen to on their stereo. Extremely catchy song that's almost entirely just chorus. Conheads in Fast Forward is weird and creepy as K2 except with a blocky 16-bit kind of sound. It sounds like the feeling of vomiting except more neutral and less traumatic. The same can be said about Green Popcorn, except that one is more structured and less chaotic. Angels of the Night is the heartfelt nightclub old cartoon theme, with someone with a low voice singing into a Bluetooth karaoke mic among ambient electronics, slow guitar strings and laid-back drums. In an alternate timeline, this song is the most played radio song. I noticed a common theme here of AM and shortwave radio, but not FM. This is why it sounds so wretched maybe. Zapped by Something Strange in the Night is a simple guitar melody, except most of the instruments sound like 60s cartoon sound effects, but 2 times weirder, so it ends up being as crazy as Feed Me. So it's not as catchy as Night Dolls, but that's fine and I listen to it more often now for some reason. Jet Set Cowboys to me, the most emotional part of the album, banana split sitcom of a witch and her 2 blonde sons from 70s is what I picture hearing it. There are also bird chirping, which we last heard surprisingly from The Skaters. Then we get a western movie with maraca shackling and a rising guitar, the kind that would play at the beginning of every episode of the reoccurring series. But since this is alien stuff, instead of dialogue with a punchline we get grunts. At the end of the song is a jump scare which I believe is meant to be a radio drama. MTV Blue is a throwback to his old songs, featuring elements from the songs he made in the past. Virtual Sumo Bubblegum has flashy kamikaze sort of drums and the whole song sounds completely warped. Moon Shocked to Death is a song from this album you will most likely enjoy. It's an amazing duo of ultra compressed, smooth as the radio knob guitar playing a harmony to accompany the electronics with a marble surf melody. Then it just grows into a rock masterpiece with unreal wah-wah liquid splashes. Both instruments keep growing, secretly even a vocal sneaks in with an announcer and the melody out of nowhere turns into a completely another direction, before immediately returning to the melody that the song started with. This song is a deceptively simple gem in the world of music, it's no Angels of the Night. Cybershock Heteropolis is an improvement upon KFC City. It's dark ambient cinematic machinery with filtered, flanged electric sounds with a kid saying, "You're the wolf, I picture Robocop waking up to this, or a 90s point-and-click sci-fi adventure game where you have to click through lots of dialogue could totally have this. This artist will be historically significant for music in the next decades in retrospective. Live on record is a relaxing, as simple as Ferraro gets both in sound and melody software sort of loop that repeats for the whole track's duration. Unfortunately, for its extended duration, it under-delivers, is what I initially thought, but after repeated listens, I don't mind. Dinostatic 3000 AD Jump Drive Mohawk is cool because it's the beginning of Radio Kerub segment, except we get it released as a full song. Rock and Roll Insect offer a cute yet immersive lullaby melody that I never heard anything similar to before. Maybe this is similar to Vangelis, but nothing I know really sounds like this. From the song Rock and Roll Radio, by the end of it I felt hypnotized in the same way I would from listening to an ambient album, which should not be the case with a song titled Rock and Roll Radio. Channel Z woke me up because I have listened to Channel Z on loop for tens of times for the last 2 weeks. This is a goodbye song from Jim as we know him, featuring fun Pacific sounds that every other album lacks, and I am really into it. It sounds like something that will be played on Smile Guide if it were a real channel. I cannot imagine any TV channel playing such ultra comfortable and warm, slightly psychedelic loops. This is pleasant in a way nothing else from Jim is. It's ultra slow, harmonic, flowing, and the culmination of 90s video culture. Then the second most important part of the song happens. Chirping fast alarm clock, almost prompting you to wake up and leave all of this behind. The atmosphere grows more dense and dense. Electrocuted hair comes into play, which turns into bass harmonies near the end. And the song just refuses to end. The fictional world of On Air and all of Jim Ferraro's past nearing their end, and I get more engulfed into the initial melody of the song as it keeps hypnotizing further, and I don't want to stop this unguided meditational Channel Z, but eventually when the chirping stops, we leave the lo-fi world and will enter into modernity, the World Wide Web which will render radio and TV obsolete. And so the album ends, opening a door into the 21st century. Hello everyone, welcome to Farside Virtual. It's 2011 and we finally have James Ferraro producing high quality. Ain't that exciting? We got rid of all the distortion, weird effects and whatever was before. New times, new needs. This is actually his most popular album, but if you have the context of the kind of music he made before, there is nothing more surprising than to hear Farside Virtual for the first time. What is your favorite James Ferraro album?
I like Farside Virtual.
Because while other Ferraro albums try to hide and mask their sound being electronic to the point where even I could not recognize what they are, this album stripped away all sophistication with built-in preset sounds, yet still came out a winner. Almost nothing of his old albums remain, except his quality to always surprise. MIDI music made with the least amount of messing around as possible, almost as a composer released this before a musician changing the sound. Realize for a moment how rebellious and transgressive this is. He had an established career for making hypnagogic pop already in the bag and could be set for the rest of his life, yet decided to experiment further. Just stupendous. Very standing out Skype samples, capturing getting ready to go to work in New York, all excited for the new business opportunity, all dressed up and so into modern technology that he has an iPad for his head. Global work opportunities and the optimistic dream to travel to America as an Indian JavaScript programmer to work for Google, intentionally trying to sound as lazy as possible while being an astonishing listening experience. Intentionally plastic with some of the percussion instruments encouraging while suffering through a smile. It improves upon itself by progressing into a hyper-exciting melody for the kind of sound it offers, which is why, while this clearly portrays some artificial simulacra of music, I still love this album and so do most people. The song Sim about the game SimCity explores the 90s video game aspect of this album perfectly, with comical instruments and a prominent piano melody. Sim's logic and characters behave in the same way this album sounds, but also walking around a point-and-click adventure game like Sam and Max, looking at yellow cars and taxis, or being around an office building and not knowing where to click. And so this captures the optimism of first playing a game, meeting all the preset people there. Of course the artwork is a Google Maps screenshot. This is actually beautiful and every instrument plays into world building of this half virtual society and manages to capture the excitement of walking around the city for the first time. Bags, in its essence, is the ambient ambient background of all beauty and perfume commercials, but a full-length track, and it is one of the most chilling ambient tracks I have heard. 3D woman walking on the fashion district of this world and snapping their fingers. And this goes on for 2 minutes before a scary old computer shutdown sound, and we get a parade of mascots and Windows 7 screensavers accompanied by a conversation of 2 text-to-speech voices talking about Walt Disney and his ultimate hyperreality. This is very plainly happy song. Pixarnia and the future of Norman Rockwell takes the cheapness and cheesiness to a whole another level with the simplest imaginable melody, that being do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. There is a clear humor to this, but this song sounds like a boring coffee commercial because of liquid refill sounds, a happy and normal working day with nothing unusual going on. MIDI goodness in all of its glory. Inspirational commercial kind with hopeful brass instruments yet gated drums. I really love how in the end a text-to-speech woman says Richard Branson's avatar says hello, which makes another possible concept for this album to be a virtual 3D chatroom, those being worlds.com, active worlds, or Second Life. People live in these 3D towns and chat together, buy clothes and start families, and that's super cool and funny at the same time. MIDI female voices falling sound like a brand new phone commercial, while the rest sounds too exciting to be one. And so the song captures all of technological excitement of the 2010s for products such as Google Glass and the iPad with clipping sleigh bells, which are sometimes offbeat. Read news while drinking coffee. Welcome to America with malls and cafes and a stable income. Think big as Walt Disney. I think this album was actually released as ringtones, so I think of it as being stuck in ringtone world. Ringtones are heard and listened to every day. They might be some of the most popular music on the planet, but we don't realize this as such, because we don't treat them as music, instead as necessary background noise. But James, no. Super fun idea, a full-length ringtone adventure. Adventures in green footprinting is probably the best example of what I am talking about, with a slightly off-tune melody and utopian virtual instruments. This is a very catchy melody that repeats over and over with minimal changes, but I somehow reconsider this thought of before as lame electronic sound, and find myself loving it this far into the album, enjoying its lack of detail as an intentional detail, and this song rewarded me by progressing this initially simple catchy jingle into a serious composition which is astonishing and unexpected. I will say it one last time, this album uses its commercial and unstylized sound as its advantage, which in turn makes it exciting and deliberate. Utopian Virtual is a MIDI genre kickstarted by this album specifically, and is my favorite genre name. Utopian meaning too good to be true, from Thomas More's Utopia, a fictional description of the perfect country. And so is the innocence of this album, a combination of easy listening and library music, but the point is, most people don't listen anymore to these instrumental jingle CDs casually for the same reasons people don't read or hold phone books anymore. Ferraro being the most famous artist to recognize these jingles, ringtones and background music for supermarkets and freeware Japanese Unity games as something significant, and so came Farside Virtual. I actually like Utopian Virtual, it's a good genre, and so I'm gonna put some names of musicians that I like from this genre. Earth Minutes is a friendly song that could play on public spaces or built into an operational system, people communicating and smiley faces put to sound. Condo Pets is about constantly being on a phone and getting notifications like level up your pets away from home, available on iOS and Windows 8. Mainly this uncomfortable constant melody, the notifications being these dilin bell sounds, interrupted by deep bass advertisement sounds. Solar Panel Smile is the last song, and it is a piano piece interpolating Windows startup effects, which is almost poetic. Even Hi-Fi Era is creatively transformative with samples, V, Windows, Skype call. I consider it as groundbreaking as Andy Warhol's pop art. Sampling is subtle. Not to mention the Macintosh sample used in both remixes in the first track's second half. In that part specifically, Macintosh Startup is put together with a non-existent shutdown sound effect, alternating between the two. Didn't make me question sampling because of how well they blended together. Solar Panel Smile part sampled Wii channel music, I thought he tried to make a Windows 11 startup sound effect in 2011 and predict the transition from 2010's decade to our new common flat corporate art style that got rid of skeuomorphism, which is why I find it works on an intuitive level. Even if his work is super meta, I can't help but feel a passionate sincerity in it. And so he never made anything lo-fi ever again. And this YouTube comment under Jarvid9 Flashpipe exactly describes my feeling on this. It is kind of a blessing that James doesn't go back to doing this kind of thing, or that he doesn't really ever talk about this era of his past anymore. It makes the whole thing seem more mysterious and vast, like a secret alternative history. I truly think James is the most underrated artist of our time. And maybe he would laugh at all this, but his art has broadened my horizons immeasurably. And they are completely correct. Solar Panel Smile makes me think of the paradigm shift and desire for growth and improvement and what it has brought to the world, which is why Farsight Virtual is beginners recommended. The same year he released a very fashionable, futuristic hip-hop album under Baby Tunes with the funniest album cover, Microsoft Paint, default color $signs, cool photo of him with sunglasses, and best of all a crowd of Chuckies from the film Child's Play walking across New York, which is so absurd it makes me smile. It took me a while to like these metallic reverbed drums, concerned, a tad bit farsighty, beat-oriented yet perfect, and every sound's attention to detail is mesmerizing. Tastefully distorted car blaring tunes with a bass sound and FL Studio kind of drums, extremely similar to the kind of music that people make today. And this came out in 2011. Just goes to show how much a different environment can shape an artist, but it's very addicting and I cannot help but dance hearing it. He also had to confirm that Baby Tunes is serious for one interview, but that kind of mysteriousness where you don't know how much of it is ironic or not is definitely part of appeal and intuitively chosen. Pepsi Baby has a deep and serious, slightly phased melody with a dark undertone and an incredible beat. The mood completely changes when a voice sample, played on different speeds, comes into play, almost like a throwback to iAsia with the go 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 sounds. I can compare it to a YouTube poop music video in how out of place it sounds, but all of these elements coming together sound marvelous. And so I can safely say this is one of the best hip-hop albums of its time, thanks to the uncommon electronic sounds the album uses. I recommend it to everyone. And he proceeded to release lots of similar lively electronic music, such as a song called Earth Jump, which was initially released under the name, here it is, Gecko Afterlife HD. Even in the hi-fi era, he still does not stop with the goofy names. This song is the best song he ever made after 2011. It was famously performed live with US Tumor together under Bodyguard. And this is an ultra lively, energetic song with many layered harmonies and melodies as well as entirely head bobbable. But the several drum beats here are the most important part. I enjoy drums on Earth Jump too much, it's too exciting. Second part of the song has a high-pitched Mongolian throat singing sample and the beat made entirely out of Half-Life 2 glass sound effects. And it continues to change among heartfelt orchestra hits and strings. Incredible. If there is one song from James Ferraro you should listen to, it's this. Then he released an entirely club album which sounds very wonky with its free and relaxed sampling and can start a crowd going. Smooth transition he did from lo-fi to hi-fi, it's extraordinary. No one else in history had done so many conflicting styles, which feel like complete opposites with beats more suited to our time. Sushi has natural wackiness of this kind of electronic music similar to Sophie's Product and Igloo Ghost, if his music was more predictable and not random. Even better is his cut too short, Boiler Room performance. I consider it to be one of the best banger raves ever and encourage everybody to listen to it. God of London EP starts with cold and mesmerizing melody and goes into a cut-looped, ethereal and detailed Japanese melody among an undemanding beat. He talks over the beautiful melody with candid autotune in a horrifyingly careless way, about having no feelings for the NYC, champagne, apocalypse, feeling like a god, and it's an almost chilling portrayal of transhumanism, sort of sounds like logical conclusion to fashion and plastic surgery. This sounds like Tate Modern or Museum of Modern Art, while his lo-fi era sounds like a kitsch museum. The second song sounds like a millionaire with a disturbing expression, who wears a fur coat and licks blood off of his fingers. It's a mesmerizing sound, and the second song has an excellent micro-sound hard-cut beat with reversed melody where the only conventional sound is hi-hats. But this music is very contemporary and can be played even years ahead and still sound new, so like a complete opposite of his lo-fi era, but both are great in their own way. His hyper-awareness is exactly why his transition from lo-fi to hi-fi was so quick and smooth. He understands both 80s sleazy punk glam weirdo rock culture and the other extreme, and all in between. It ends with a 12-minute real piano composition called Capitoline Wolf. Like he understands the world and art really well. For instance, he released a modern classical album about Amazon. Hollywood Vishnu is another good, very short bootleg, holding songs where he sings over processed, pitch-shifted, adult contemporary pop samples, featuring a fan's favorite, Twilight Pretender. Personally, I don't think he abandoned humor, I think he just transformed it into a completely different category, so it's still present there, just more subtle. And so, he made many more strange, bleak, lethargic, terrifying singularity industrial, even fanfare for Boston Marathon 2017, which costs 9/11, simulation in Roblox environment. Yes, this is actually made by the same guy who made On Air. I am not afraid to admit I don't get these albums, so I will leave the job of reviewing them to someone else. In conclusion, his music is a rhizome of different personalities and thoughts, but before I leave I need to mention my favorite James Ferraro song, and that is Lies by the Draculas. This song really has that feel like something that would play in an embedded MP3 on very artistic, personal websites made in early 2010s with embedded images, GIFs, and splash bucket backgrounds, a possible Night Dolls outtake, a glowing rainbow road in the background with vampire icons with GIFs of portable pyramids in the common interest club is the sheer joy of remembering the crackling keys you listened to years ago. Such is this light, and the best James Ferraro song. I feel like I have lived in a lot of new worlds and different bodies, and I will end it with that. I appreciate your attention. This is my first and last music review. I might play James Ferraro game Desolation Seed on this channel once it comes out, but for now I'll go listen to Spencer Clark. My moral takeaways from this video are: music doesn't have to be a background activity, it can be active and engaging. Originality and creativity can save beauty. The world has endless potential both to be explored and to be created. Goodbye.
It's like the same.